The D20, the iconic symbol of the tabletop role-playing industry, the poster boy of geek culture. Chances are, if you've been past a comic book shop or seen a D&D online stream, then you've been acquainted with this icosahedron. And it's been around for a good while as well. In fact, since ancient times. In 2003, a glass Roman game-playing dice was sold at auction for $17.9 thousand US. That's quite a pretty penny. But the rise of the D20 doesn't come from 2,000 years ago, nor does it come from the 1970s when D&D First Edition was released. Instead, it comes from the year 2000 with the release of Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition. In the year 2000, Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition was released, and with it the SRD. See, Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition was to pave the way for the game's future, using this new D20 system, and the SRD allowed other companies to collaborate with Wizards of the Coast, the publishers, to be able to make content for Dungeons & Dragons. It meant you only needed to do half the legwork. All you do is produce a setting and the system's already in place. Pretty simple, pretty easy. And it's a great way for your company to attract fans. Chaosium, under contract with Wizards of the Coast, began producing Call of Cthulhu material for them, using the D20 system. That meant that you could have Nyarlathotep in the Forgotten Realms, or you could bring your dwarf to play in Lovecraft Country. White Wolf, known for Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse and other horror titles, produced material like Ravenloft, now better known as its remastered title, The Curse of Strahd. As you can see, everybody was having their taste of the D20 system. You could be superheroes in Masterminds and Mutants, you could be cowboys, you could be pirates, you could be whatever you want. There was even a Star Wars tabletop RPG using the D20 system that's had a few remasters since. But it couldn't last forever. In 2003, Valor Project released The Book of Erotic Fantasy. And Wizards of the Coast didn't want to have anything to do with that. So they revoked the right for Valar to have any interference with D&D's material. This brought to light the sway that Wizards of the Coast had over everything that was being released. And it caused a lot of companies to realise that people weren't going to stick around for their system, and they couldn't put whatever they wanted in there. So people sort of started backing out of that. Companies didn't have to use the SDR to use a D20 system. They could publish stuff just the same without having to be licensed under Wizards of the Coast. So people started making things that didn't have the D&D name tag. It wasn't legit D&D material, but it was still their stuff. And thus, a lot of companies fell away from it. Chaosium went back to using the basic role-playing game system, which is a D100 system. And to make things worse, Wizards of the Coast released 3.5, which meant that loads of companies that had been producing material for D&D, it was all outdated. Since then, there's been a serious decline in the D20 system. And that's not to say that D&D is the sole user of that system. There's other competitors like Pathfinders that uses it and is quite popular. But it's not the same system that everybody on the street was using back in the day. In recent years, and this might be the Baader-Meinhof phenomena, but I've noticed a rise in other systems outside of D&D. I used to strictly play D&D 5th edition and that was it. But since branching out, I've seen a much wider community in the tabletop role-playing games. See, I think a similar thing is happening with what happened in the early 2000s, with the rise of tabletop RPGs reaching the masses rather than just being a small niche. People want to get into it, but they don't want to play something too crunchy. Now, I'm not saying D&D 5th edition is crunchy, far from it, but there are a lot of other games that are more open and fluid for you to play, such as the Powered by the Apocalypse. Starting off in 2010 with Apocalypse World, there's been many hacks since. It has very fluid and open game design, which allows people to branch out in any direction they like, and it's so easy for anyone to get into, which I think makes it a lot more attractive to newcomers. And from my experience, the homebrew material for it is a lot more playable than homebrew stuff that you get for D&D 5th edition. But I don't think it's just me. The immensely popular The Adventure Zone ran their third campaign using the Apocalypse World system Monster of the Week. And while this is biased to the access of other games, the Roll20 statistics show that there's been a rise in other systems and a drop in D&D and the D20 system. I mean, a couple of years ago, the top three were D&D 5th edition, Pathfinder, and D&D 3.5. But now in recent years, you can see that it's changed. There's a lot of people that have left the 3rd edition and 3.5, sorry, and then gone into 5th edition. But even so, now, first place is still D&D, but its percentage of players compared to the others has dropped. And other games / uncategorized is in 2nd place, with bronze being Call of Cthulhu, which isn't a D20 system. Now, like I say, there's a few biases here because Roll20 has become a lot more popular with the widespread of D&D due to streaming services, and also Roll20 didn't have a larger catalogue of games as it used to. That being in mind, you can still see that there's a rise of other systems. While it's safe to say that the D20 system isn't dead, it's still not as popular as it used to be. But who knows, maybe it'll come back into fashion. I have to say though, I've really been enjoying my experience outside of the D20 system, and I urge you to go and try it too. Personally, I've moved to Dungeon World, and I've been thinking of splashing in some Fellowship in there too. But hey, say if you really do like D&D and you try other systems out, you can still go back to D&D, but take what you like, the elements from those other systems, and work them into your own. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't need to be so strict with just D&D. There's a whole world of opportunities of role-playing games out there. Why stick to just one when you can have them all? Thank you for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, that would be pretty cool. Obviously, by this video, an avid kind of player of tabletop RPGs, not exclusive to D&D, so I'm trying to branch out with that and yeah, just experience what there is to have. So if you'd like to see any more content like that, just comment down below what you'd like to see. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask them. And yeah, thank you for watching.